The movie starts with a burial happening in a little village named Tropoj, in Albania. The Albanian mafia is present at the burial, and a few men with weapons are standing near the graves of their fellow members who have passed away. The person in charge, Murad Krasniqi, informs them that they'll get back at Brian Mills and end his life. After that, the next part of the story happens in Los Angeles. Brian seems to be employed at a car wash, but he prefers to polish the cars on his own. He visits his former wife Lenore's house to meet their daughter. Kim. Lenore informs Brian that she is with her boyfriend now. Brian doesn't seem very happy about this news. He decides to drive to the boyfriend's house, and he uses a secret GPS device he placed in Kim's phone to find his way there. He stops their kissing, and asks Kim to go, so she can keep practicing driving. Kim is now 18 years old but hasn't passed her driving test, after failing twice before. Kim is upset because Brian is still overly worried about her safety, even though 3 years have passed since the events of her abduction by human traffickers from Albania. In Paris, France, the Albanians enter the house of Brian's friend, Jean-Claude, and hurt him to get details about where Brian is. However, Jean-Claude has no clue about Brian's location. The bad guys will later find out that Brian is going to Istanbul, Turkey, for his personal reasons. The following day, Brian visits Lenore. He sees her crying because she had an argument with Stewart, her husband, which led to him canceling their intended journey to China. Brian proposes that Lenore and Kim come along with him to Istanbul. However, Lenore declines, saying she doesn't want to inconvenience him. At the same time, the Albanians reach Istanbul by using a mountain road, and they wait for Brian to arrive. When he reaches the city, he goes to his hotel and calls Lenore. While he's in the middle of leaving a message, he gets surprised by Lenore and Kim showing up unexpectedly. Inside his hotel room, Brian takes out a trunk filled with weapons. Kim and Lenore are in the next room. During the night, Brian and Kim go for a boat ride on the Bosphorus. Brian, not very subtly, starts a conversation about Kim's boyfriend, Jamie. He asks if she has strong feelings for him. But Kim is uncertain. She brings up how Lenore once described her connection with Brian, before Kim was born, as something very special. The following day, Brian and Lenore decide to let Kim enjoy herself while they explore the area with a taxi driver from the location. But during the ride, Brian feels something isn't right. He instructs the driver to take a specific route and starts telling Lenore to return to their hotel room for safety. Lenore exits the car and flees while Brian takes control of the vehicle. He attempts to call Kim, but she's swimming in the hotel pool and doesn't notice her phone ringing. Unfortunately, Lenore becomes trapped and can't escape. Some Albanian thugs confront Brian, and he swiftly starts fighting them off. Unfortunately, one of them seizes Lenore. He commands Brian to lower his weapon. Then he contacts Kim and lets her know that both he and her mother are in trouble. Kim is frightened, but he provides her with a safe location to go to, understanding that they might search for her as well. After ending the call, he smashes the phone and they violently attack him. Eventually, they manage to capture both Brian and Lenore. Kim exits the pool, goes to her room, and then climbs out of the window into the adjacent room. There, she hides herself inside Brian's closet before the other criminals enter in search of her. Security guards become aware of their presence, but the thugs kill them. In the hideout of the villains, Brian is bound to a pipe using a zip tie around his wrists. When he's left alone, he retrieves a hidden cell phone and attempts to call his friend Sam, but Sam doesn't answer. He then calls Kim once more, and she assures him that she's safe. After Kim leaves the closet, Brian instructs her to grab a grenade and throw it out the window onto a parking garage. This way, he can hear the explosion and gauge how close she is to his location. This plan is to help him know where she is. However, he's forced to end the call and hide the phone when Murad enters the room. Murad presents Brian with photographs of the people who are dead due to Brian's actions. Among the pictures, Murad shows a photo of Mirko, his own son, who Brian killed by attaching him to battery cables with nails, leading to electrocution until his heart failed. Brian explains that he acted that way because they had kidnapped his daughter, but Murad disregards his justification. He's determined to cause Brian extreme suffering. Murad brings Lenore into the scene and injures her neck. He then suspends her upside down with a bag over her head, to observe how long it takes for the blood to leave her head. He informs Brian that once they capture Kim, Murad plans to sell her to a lowly brothel where she'll be exploited by numerous men and reduced to nothing more than an object. Brian successfully releases himself and rescues Lenore. He contacts Kim once again, and continues guiding her by using more grenades. He senses that she's getting closer, and provides her with directions. Brian damages a steam pipe, allowing steam to rise through a chimney. He instructs Kim to focus on the steam signal. Kim lowers a gun down the chimney. Meanwhile, Kim moves from roof to roof, but she eventually gets trapped by one of the thugs. Just in time, Brian shoots the thug and saves Kim. He warmly embraces his frightened daughter and takes her to safety. They hijack a taxi, in an attempt to rescue Lenore within a 5-minute window, as monitored by a timer on Kim's phone. Unfortunately, they miss the deadline, and the bad guys take Lenore away. Returning to Kim, Brian and her drive the stolen taxi through the city, evading pursuit from the villains who are chasing them in their own vehicles. Brian directs Kim to head for the American embassy. Despite being pursued and shot at, they eventually outpace the villains and crash through a toll booth. Brian contacts Sam again and requests him to get help from anyone who can offer protection. He explains to Kim that the villains are after him, but she will be safe at the embassy. Brian assures her that he'll locate her mother and reunite them. Brian eventually discovers the location where Murad and his henchmen are holding Lenore. He storms the compound and continues eliminating the enemies, engaging in a physical brawl with one thug. The thug nearly stabs Brian, but Brian swiftly overpowers him, disarms him, and takes control of his weapon. Eventually, he corners Murad in a confined space, with gun in his hand. Brian asks Murad about his other sons, and Murad tells him he has 2 other sons. Realizing that killing Murad would lead to his other sons seeking revenge, Brian decides against taking Murad's life. He has reached a point where he is weary of all the violence. He places the gun down and begins to leave the room. In an unexpected turn, Murad takes the gun and attempts to shoot Brian while his back is turned. But, the gun is unloaded. Brian hands Murad the bullet he had removed earlier, and then swiftly pushes Murad's head into a coat hanger, ending his life. Brian then approaches Lenore, who is lying unconscious on the floor. She regains consciousness, and they share a heartfelt embrace. 3 weeks later, Kim is undergoing her driving test and she successfully passes. Brian warmly embraces her, and she invites him to celebrate. She takes both him and Lenore to an ice cream shop. As they sit down, the waitress brings 4 sundaes. Just then, Kim's boyfriend Jamie arrives. She inquires if it's all right with Brian, who initially seems a bit uneasy but eventually warms up to the idea. He gives his approval, and they all share the moment together. And that's all for this recap. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.